13,000 years ago, the first humans to reach the Americas supposedly arrived via the ice-free corridor, the textbook shortcut. But nature doesn't build shortcuts, it builds bottlenecks. This was a barren 1,000-mile trench, flanked by mile-high walls of Pleistocene ice, Arctic cold with a relentless screaming gale. This wasn't a gateway to a new world, it was a sandblaster. But we didn't look at the reality, we looked at the map. For decades, the obvious route was a straight line connecting the Bering Strait, then a massive landmass called Beringia, directly to Montana. It gave us the Clovis first model, named after the town in New Mexico, where we found spear points, fluted ballistic masterpieces designed to drop mammoths. The story was cinematic, the Blitzkrieg hypothesis, the kind of title that sells books but ignores logistics. A wave of super predators with sharp sticks, sweeping down the continent, wiping out the megafauna in a few centuries. The theory matched the evidence we had at the time, but it suffered from survivor bias. Stone doesn't rot, which is convenient because everything else does. Finding tens of thousands of Clovis points scattered from coast to coast created a trap for 20th century scientists. It suggested the colonization of the Americas was an entirely terrestrial conquest, a hike, a triumph of legs over latitude. But then the timeline crashed. In the 1990s, archaeologists at Monteverde in Chile found evidence of humans that shouldn't exist, 14,500 years ago. While that dating has recently been challenged, it's not alone. Early sites also appeared in Oregon, Idaho, and Texas. That's a problem. How were early people cooking dinner all the way down to Chile when the supposed front door to the Americas was still a solid block of ice for another 1,500 years? To solve it, we stopped looking at the map and started asking the mud. In 2016, a team drilled deep cores into the ancient lake beds. They weren't looking for arrowheads. They were looking for evidence of lunch, pollen, DNA, dung, the biological exhaust of a living ecosystem. The assumption was simple. Ice melts. Grass grows. Mammoths eat grass. Humans eat mammoths. It's a simple food chain. But when they retrieved the cores, the chain wasn't just broken. It hadn't even been forged yet. For the first 2,000 years, the corridor was effectively lifeless. No trees, no scrub brush, no megafauna, just 1,000 miles of wet, dead mud. That emptiness isn't just a detail. It's the first variable in a lethal equation. Let's run the numbers on that vacuum. A family unit of 6 is a biological engine requiring roughly 20,000 calories a day. Across 1,000 miles of mud, you're looking at something like a 100-day crossing, totaling 2 million calories. Normally you forage as you go. But here, the fuel density is 0. You have to carry every calorie. We're talking about pemmican, the ultimate prehistoric energy bar, a leathery block of rendered fat and crushed meat that tastes exactly as advertised. But to survive the crossing, you'd need a mountain of the stuff, up to 1/4 of a ton. That's an impossible payload, and that's before you pack anything else required to not die. The numbers get worse. The gale force Arctic wind can double your metabolic burn rate. And remember, this isn't a squad of Navy SEALs on a weekend exercise. You're migrating a village. You have elders, toddlers, and pregnant women. In a landscape that wants you dead, the weakest link defines your speed. Could someone have tried? Maybe, but they weren't making it to Montana. When it mattered, it wasn't a migration route, it was a death sentence. So if the land route was a trap, how did they get to South America? The only variable that wasn't fully frozen was the Pacific coast. While the inland corridor was a sterile wind tunnel, the shoreline was a buffet. Today, the leading theory calls this route the Kelp Highway. A highway implies you have to drive. But this system pulls you. The California current drives nutrients south, triggering a chain of life along the coast. You don't navigate it, you follow the food. The buffet starts with the upwelling. Deep, nutrient-rich water floods the continental shelf. Sunlight hits the shallows, triggering an explosion of kelp forests. And kelp supports everything from sea urchins to otters to seals. We aren't talking about a few loose weeds. We're talking underwater cathedrals, with a far better food court. The kelp acts as a natural breakwater. It dampens the swell, neutralizing the energy of the Pacific. protected water, high calories, reduced exposure, a rare combination in the Pleistocene world. For a migrating human, that's not scenery, it's infrastructure, and it forms a largely continuous marine ecosystem from Japan down to Chile. A limpet in Japan isn't that different from a limpet in California. A seal in Alaska tastes just like a seal in Chile. You don't need to be an explorer or guess what won't kill you next. You just keep eating variations of the same sushi menu for 10,000 miles. You don't choose this route. The need for food pulls you south. But there's a physical constraint. To harvest this protected high-calorie system efficiently, you can't just walk the jagged cliffs. To truly access the engine, you have to get off the rocks. 50,000 years ago, long before anyone set foot in the Americas, humans crossed the Wallacea Line to reach Australia. They were navigating deep water when the height of terrestrial technology was a sharp rock on a stick. If they could handle open ocean crossings, then by comparison, hugging a resource-rich coastline would have been a Sunday drive. The people who reached America came from Beringia. Forget the land bridge idea. This was a subcontinent twice the size of Texas. While mammoths claimed the dry interior, the people claimed the coast, a world of islands and inlets now lost to the sea. For thousands of years, glacial ice blocked the path to the Americas. By the time the ice retreated enough to let them move south, they were fully adapted to the freezing ocean. And they didn't need to invent boats to bypass the ice. They'd already perfected the only tool that worked. We tend to think of technology as something that requires an outlet and a monthly subscription. But a seaworthy boat is a supercomputer of organic engineering. First, you source the timber to steam and bend the ribs without shattering the grain. Then you sew marine mammal skins together using bone needles and waterproof the seams with rendered animal fat. A single microscopic leak in freezing water is fatal. There are no second attempts. It requires a mastery of hydrodynamics, buoyancy, and material science that took generations to perfect. They didn't survive despite being primitive. They survived because their technology was sophisticated. So why did we cling to that inland route for so long? Because the inland corridor was preserved, but the coastal route was destroyed. When the ice melted, sea levels rose 400 feet. The beaches where they camped washed away. The boats they built rotted. We found the Clovis evidence in New Mexico because it was high and dry. We lost the coastal history because the ocean ate the evidence. The corridor was a wasteland. The Kelp Highway was a feast. Survival doesn't care about our maps. It follows food, and hunger decides the route.